Do you DNF books? Hi, my name is Sherry Hayes. I write steamy contemporary romance and BDSM romance. And I have changed my opinion on this over the years. I used to really try to finish a book if I started it. I didn't like to DNF, but my opinion has completely changed. I have DNF'd quite a few books over the last few years. And I'm going to share with you the reasons as to why I did stop reading. I'm not going to go into specific books, but I want to share how I determine whether I'm going to stop reading a book or not. If I stop reading a book within the first few pages or even the first couple of chapters, it is most likely because of grammar issues or because I'm just not like gelling with the writing style. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad story, but if I am having to, correct the grammar in my head, if my editor brain is constantly kicking in, or I'm just not enjoying the writing style of the author, then I am most likely going to DNF that story and move on to something else. If I make it through to say 30 to 40% of the book and decide that I'm going to stop reading it, it's most likely because I just don't care enough about the characters to continue on. There's something that hasn't hooked me, that hasn't made me care, whether this character succeeds or fails, lives, dies, whatever. And so I just don't care what happens to them enough to continue reading this story. So I'm gonna move on. And there have even been some times when I have stopped reading as far into a book as 80%. Now, this has only happened twice. And the one book I stopped because it was at the 80% mark, which if you are a writer, you know that's typically around the time when the big conflict happens in romance and there's this whole climax, everything kind of like falls apart, comes together, what have you, and it's gearing up so that the couple can, resolve the issue and, declare their love and everything, how the story is going to end up. That book, I got to that point in the story, and I realized I didn't care whether they ended up together or not. It wasn't the story was bad per se. It wasn't that the characters were horrible. I just realized I didn't really like them that much as a couple. Individually, they were fine, but I didn't really love them as a couple together, and so I didn't care if they ended up together. So I decided to stop reading it. The other reason had to do with a BDSM story, and I am pretty particular with my BDSM stories. I expect my doms to be honorable. I'm not a big dark romance reader, so I don't like there's certain things I expect. Let's just leave it at that. There are certain things that I expect my doms to emulate when it comes to their submissives and play, etc. And we reached the 80% mark in this story, and the dom did something that, in my opinion, was very not honorable as a dom. It made him the opposite of a good dom. So I had enough. I was like, nope. He had done a few, now keep in mind, he had done a few questionable things earlier in the story that were kind of riding the line that I wasn't really happy about, but I wasn't like, oh heck no type of a situation. But this one, it crossed the line for me, and I had enough. We were done. So those are the reasons why I will personally DNF a book. Do you DNF books? And if so, why will you DNF a book? And does it change for you depending on how far you are into a book when you do decide to call it quits? Let me know in the comments.